Hellraiser follows Riley, who is a young woman struggling with addiction, who finds a mysterious and ancient puzzle box that, should you solve it, opens doors you may not want to open. And soon she's on a quest of sorts to retrieve someone that she loves, and she'll have to come in contact with the sadistic but beautiful Cenobites and contend with all their desires.
This film's version of the priest is now a woman, which takes the burden off the audience of trying to compare the performance, to Doug Bradley's iconic portrayal of this character, lovingly known by the fans as Pinhead. There's a sensuality to her, there's a grace, there's a beauty, and a hunger and a desire that you will see as she navigates this world and encounters these different characters who have come into contact with this mysterious puzzle box and are trying to solve it through a myriad of tasks and games that the priest presents to them.
Why was I interested in directing a new version of Hellraiser? I'm such a fan of the franchise. I think anybody who loves the Hellraiser movies and Hellraiser literature could say that this is a big, vast world to play in. There's so much that you can do with Hellraiser. So anything that keeps the conversation going, anything that opens the box and takes us back into the labyrinth, I think is, as a fan, a journey that I want to go on. As a filmmaker, it's a really, really unique challenge. Hellraiser is dense, it's complex, it's layered, it explores many themes of the interior and the exterior. It's absolutely terrifying and visceral, but it's also surreal. And look, as a crafts person of film, it's absolutely a joy to work on, and an honor to be a part of. So I'm just happy that I had the opportunity to do it. Clive was a creative producer on the film, so he was involved in all manner of process and in the development and the realization of this, and in the edit, post production, and he was very generous with his time. And being the inventor, the writer of Hellbound Heart, the director of the first film, producer of several Hellraiser films. He knows the world like no one else. It's uniquely his vision. And yet he was very supportive of the idea that this was a new group of artists and that they were going to respond to the material in their own way, and that it was ripe for some level of reinvention. We wanted to capture the spirit of the original movies, but also, be open to new ideas where they presented themselves. And so he fully embraced that. As an artist, he's very collaborative and wants to find common ground, shared obsessions, as he says. He would call me a lot in prep, and we would talk through passages of the old book. We would talk about elements of the script that worked, areas that could use more fleshing out. He always met me with this story. His advice was always to tell the story that was before us, and not to try to emulate what he had done before. And as a producer, he can be challenging at times, and he knows when to push us. And so I'm really grateful of the time and collaboration that I got to spend with him. And he's a joy to work with. Every conversation with him is a marvel.
I watched the original the night before I taped my audition. And I was completely taken with how sexy and just beautiful and terrifying this world that Clive had created was. And that made me want to audition more. And then reading the script, it was so good. I mean, I remember thinking when I read the script, oh, wow, like this is good and this is going to look good. Like if they can really do what they've written, like, wow, this is going to be really, really, really good. And I wanted, the second that I met David in the callback, I knew that I wanted to work with him. And if it wasn't going to be on this, I was going to petition him to work on anything that he was going to do because it was so much fun. I mean, he was everything that I want in a director as an actor. I mean, he gave such, interesting, fun direction and ideas that I hadn't thought of what to do, you know, and with volume and with stillness and just in the callback. And then, you know, then once I got to Serbia and we started having Zooms and talking about, you know, the intention behind different scenes and what the priest wanted and what her goals were, you know, with different characters and different scenes, he was so generous, like with his direction and with his ideas and with everything that he had thought of that he wanted. And then everything that I had and my well of emotion, it all just kind of like meshed together, and we gelled, and, you know, and we did what we did. And I just hope that people liked it.
My biggest challenges in making this film, on one hand, you know, we had to find, you know, how to, you know, pay the proper homage to the movies that had come before us, and but also open this up for new audiences. A lot of that meant getting lost in our own obsessions that were Hellraiser related and following all the things that we thought were amazing about Hellraiser. I'll also say Hellraiser is quite a logistical feat in horror filmmaking. You know, I joke it could have been a person in a mask with a knife, but it's not. They're interdimensional BDSM demons that come at you from an endless labyrinth and shoot chains at you. I mean, it's the gags are insanely complicated and require a lot of planning. And Hellraiser's always been known for its practical effects, so you got to do it for real, and that's very much the spirit of the franchise. So I think I speak for, you know, all of the crafts people in the film that it's just a challenge to take on. And then I think for the actors it's an enormous leap of faith, you know. And I think it's you're always out on a limb when you're doing horror, because you're dealing with very, very intense ideas. You're dealing with a lot of imagination. Sometimes it can seem quite absurd when you're on set what you're working with. But for the performances to run with what we were doing and to do it, you know, with sheer abandon is what the movie needed. And it's a big testament to Jamie's performance, you know, as the priest. It takes a lot of courage to put on that suit and to lead the other Cenobites and to do it with confidence and grace. And I think she was an example to all of us on set. And when the priest comes on set, you can hear a hush fall over the crew. You know, it's like her Majesty is present, and you better offer her, you know, the proper respect, or things could go horribly wrong. So yeah, Hellraiser's challenging, but it's incredibly rewarding franchise. I can't think of anything else like it.
The makeup process was intense. I've never done prosthetics before, but I was in such good hands with the Russells and their entire team. Sierra Russell was like my key. She would do me every single day, and Josh was always there, you know, gluing all the pins on individually to the face piece while the head was coming on. But the process, depending on the day, depending on how many other Cenobites were working that day, or how many practical effects were happening. You know, for example, Goran's loom. The makeup could take anywhere from 4.5 to 6 hours. If we could just focus, and, you know, and it was just me, we could do 4.5. But, you know, if they had to step away, you know, or if there was, you know, if they were shorthanded that day, up to 6. It was an incredibly, I had to be incredibly patient. I had to find a thing in myself that I didn't know existed. So I had to I had to just learn to sort of, you know, meditate and relax and just let this incredible team of people practice their craft on me, you know, every day that I would film. And then once I was in it, once the neck piece went on, I was in it for the duration of that filming day, because it was too jarring to go in and out of it. So I would go in it and stay. And I would stay in it for the duration of filming. And I would, a trick that I learned was to just isolate myself. So I wouldn't, you know, be in the same sort of green room or holding as anybody else. I would try to find a corner and just sit and like face a wall, you know, or just be with Sierra. She was the only person that I would sort of, you know, like giggle with. You know, if I ever did need, you know, like a break or a sip of a Schweppes bitter lemon, she was always there. She was the only one that I would let come over to me when I wasn't filming, you know, to touch me and talk to me, because it was a lot. And then to take it all off, you know, was another 30 minutes to an hour. Just again, depending on how many people I had, you know, taking off the hands, the face, the whole thing, you know. So it's like if I could have someone on each hand and the face, 30 minutes. But if it was just one or two people, it could take up to an hour. You know, but stripping that suit off at the end of the day was always a huge relief. Once the suit was off, because it's incredibly restricting, especially across, like you couldn't you couldn't expand into it. I couldn't take a full breath. So once the suit would come off, I was fine. And then it was just a lot of solvents and oils to remove everything.